was absolutely a complete surprise. I was speechless in the beginning for a few minutes, and even throughout the afternoon as I talked with my coworkers and thanked them for what they do and that they appreciated me.
We're the allo transplant department, and we get referrals for transplants. So that comes to the case manager, and once we've sent out an email, it goes to the patient rep, which is the role that Steve does. So without his role, we couldn't do any of our role. He gets verification of benefits for the patient. Once we've set up the patient with appointments, we know they have the insurance they need, then he's calling them, setting up appointments and talking to them. And that's part of, what we're so happy with Steve about is the way that he interacts with the patients.
As a cancer survivor, I know what the patients are going through. I know the psychological issues it can cause. And in my position, once again, if I can do anything to relieve any stress from a patient, I'm going to do everything I can. And financial stress is one of the big things when you're diagnosed with cancer.
I love to work with Steve. He's a great person. He's funny. He's just good to be around. We enjoy each other's company on the job. And I think everybody who works with Steve's very lucky.
To have been singled out by coworkers, to be nominated for this and to receive this is quite humbling. I work with incredible people, and I see the work they do every day. And like I say, all of them would be deserving of this award. I was just the lucky one that got chosen for this, and thanks to their nominations and the kind words they've said about me is what got me to this point.